Hello, my name is Virginia, and I'd like to talk to you today about knitting locks directly into your work. We have a farm where we raise Wensleydale and Teeswater sheep, and they have an amazing lock structure that suits this purpose ideally. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some locks, some of which have been dyed, okay, and some are natural, and I'm working them into this knitted piece, which will probably become a cowl or a scarf, and as you can see, the texture is carried on both sides. What I'm using is just a piece of natural color white DK yarn. You could use almost any yarn you wanted to. This happens to be our own Yellowfarm yarn. And I'm knitting with a size 17 wooden single pointed needle. So you can see the texture that I've gotten here, and really the only yarn I've used is this little strand of DK. So I'm going to show you how I do that to create this texture. I'm using a seed stitch on this particular pattern, and boy, I'm looking a little close here, but I do want you to be able to see how to do this. To prepare the locks, I'm simply taking them. Okay, here's a lock that has come. It's lightly washed from our flock, and I'm going to separate it into two pieces by just pulling it this way. Okay, like that. And I'm going to use one of these as I knit through. So I've taken my needle and inserted it as though I was going to purl, which I am going to do, and I'm going to take my lock, and for this work I am not allowing any of the lock but perhaps just a little bit of the tip to hang out. So I'm just going to leave a little bit of tip there and hold it with my work and simply carry this lock along with my yarn as I knit. So that's as I purl, that's a purl stitch, and then I'm doing a seed stitch, so I'm knitting and purling through here. Now this particular work is being done in three different colors, a kind of a turquoise and a black and a white. So I'm going to take and add a turquoise lock to my white lock to help get some of this colored texture that I have here. So I have started this row with some white and some green. I'm going to add a black lock to that. I've laid the locks out here on my knee. I find that's a little easier to work with, to have them right there. So I'm just going to simply add this lock in with my work as I'm doing my seed stitch. And I'm just pinching it there and carrying it right along, letting a little of the edge hang out. That's fine. It's a textured piece of work here that we're playing with, and so now we're going to purl and carry that along, and it looks to me like I'm about to run out here of the green and the black, so I'm going to reach down and get a piece of white lock. I don't want, for this piece of work, I don't want my locks to be too terribly thick. It's a thick enough piece of work as it is, so I am not adding a huge amount of bulk to my work. But you can, if you had a bigger needle and you wanted to carry along more color, more locks with your work, you certainly could. You just have to allow for that width into the needle, the width of your needle. And now I'm going to add a little black. I'm just going to separate this lock. And the nice part about this kind of work is you do not have to be really specific, and you certainly don't have to be super tidy about it, because it is a very textural piece. So I'm just adding that lock again with my yarn. No big deal with that. It's really very simple. And again, I'm doing a seed stitch. So I'm going to bring my yarn to the front here, do my purl stitch, come around with all of my locks, go back to a knit stitch. I think in here I'm going to add again a little more white because I seem to be getting kind of dark with that. And again, you can do or add any colors you like. That's the really nice part about working with locks this way and adding them as you go. You have total control over what colors come next. If you want a block of color, again, this piece is being worked with three separate colors. and I'm carrying them sometimes by themselves and sometimes together. And again, I just put the locks next to each other, pinch them, not worried too much about the little ends. Some of those can poke out a little bit and that will be just fine. And then I just adding them to the back here. Oops. Adding them to the back here, and just as you would if you were adding a new piece of yarn, carrying it along with your regular piece of yarn. And we're just about to the end of this row, so I'll show you again what it looks like when we get there. Really simple, nothing terribly difficult about this process, but it is sort of unique to the fiber that I'm using, which again is a very silky, shiny, curly lock structure, and that's pretty unique to the Leicester Longwolves, the Wensleydales and the Teeswaters. You could use a Cotswold or a Lincoln for this as well. You might not get the sheen. The softness of handle for these particular sheep is outstanding, but of course I'm a little biased because I do breed them. But there you go. It looks, you can flip it over on both sides. It looks as though you've knit this with a textured art yarn, and yet you've actually knit it with just a handful of locks that look like this. Just be careful when you're purchasing your locks that you purchase locks that can be pulled apart easily and nicely, and you'll be able to work with. This piece, for instance, is too short. That would be really tough to work with. But many of the locks, you'll find the structure is right there. You just pull it out and you can see it's lovely. You could leave it like this, or you could separate it into two bits and add it. It's really up to you. It gives you all kinds of flexibility in your knitting work. So I hope you'll experiment with this technique and play with adding locks to your work. Thanks for joining me. Bye.